So, young Millie Gooch, how the devil are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
I'm okay. I've just got over this super cold business. We had to cancel last week's podcast, didn't we? Because I
Yeah.
sounded like a Dalek. So
Yeah, you sent me a voice note and I was like, you do sound rough.
I know. So I remember when I first met you, and I'm not sure if you remember, but I was at the Mindful Drinking Festival. And you walked past me, and it was like seeing a celebrity. I would say that. It was like, no, is that girl from Sober Girl Society, Millie Gooch? I went, hello, Millie. And you went, hello, Dave, all right? And we had a little bit of a chat, and you were busy doing other bits and pieces. And that's the first time we met.
Yeah.
And that was back in 2019 now, in the summer, I think.
Yeah, it would have been a while ago now because they haven't held a mindful drinking festival for a while, which I'm very upset about. Well, they've done online, but not in person.
Yeah, well, we had the one at the brewery, didn't we? The Truman
Yeah.
Brewery. And I think you did a talk there and I did a talk as well. And yeah, it's been a rough time, hasn't it? Because of lockdown and things. I think half of my sobriety has been in lockdown. But I hadn't really found that a challenge, to be honest. But what I did realize from that was how difficult I would have found it if I was drinking.
Yeah, I think most people, whether in a good way or a bad way, their relationship has changed over lockdown. I think for a lot of people, it's given them food for thought. But I completely agree. I'm so glad that I was not drinking through it because I think that is a coping mechanism that I probably really would have turned to.
Because I think I was drinking quite a bit more than you, not that it's competition, but I was hiding alcohol and that as well, So it would have been me trying to manage getting the alcohol each day when the supermarkets were shut and, all this. I'm just so grateful that I gave up when I did. So how did your drinking start? Because I was 14, but I think it was a bit older, wasn't you?
Yeah, I was. So weirdly, I didn't really start drinking until I was like 18, a bit towards the end of being 17. But then I went off to uni and I was kind of, pretty much a nothing drinker before I went to uni. And then when I went to uni, it was almost expected. There wasn't even a question of like, oh, am I going to drink at uni? Like I remember we got given like a freshers pack on arrival and there was like a Jägerbomb shot glass and it was like a freshers pub crawl. Like absolutely everything was just centered around booze and cheap booze at that. And I didn't have much money when I went to uni, so I got like 3 different jobs. I like flyed outside one club. I worked in a shot bar, so it was like a bar that exclusively did shots. And then I worked in another bar dancing on tables and got paid in alcohol. I did get money as well, but they used to ply us with booze. So I went from this like absolute nothing drinker to like a 4-5 night a week binge drinker. And really that's how it all started.
Yeah, I mean, I remember you're too young, but I've spoken about this before that at your age, there were 18 to 30 holidays and it was all aimed around getting absolutely trashed. And you used to get drunk on the coach and they used to pour these huge, like, bottles of booze down you on the beach. You'd stand there like a pelican with with whatever concoction it was. It was a mixture of stuff.
Yeah.
And I remember that in the afternoon, sunstroke as well, because we're all dehydrated. It was like in Greece somewhere, about 90 degrees, drinking like neat spirit, but all mixed together with like rum, vodka and stuff. And then just laying on the beach, vomiting everywhere to get back on the boat. And it's actually really dangerous, isn't it?
Yeah, it's sad as well. So when I was must be about 23, 24, I went traveling to Thailand for 3 weeks with some of my friends. And when I tell you I spent 95% of it either drunk or hungover. And I look back now and I'm like, I didn't see any of the culture. I didn't do anything. I just spent the whole time either really drunk or hungover. And I remember we went to like the full moon party and it was meant to be this like amazing spectacle, but all it was just people like drinking buckets of mixed spirits and then just being violently sick on the beach. And when I look back now, I'm like, oh, it's such a waste of a holiday.
Yeah, I know. I was chatting to a guy yesterday. He's only 25, and I really want you to talk to him. He's fantastic, honestly. His name's Charlie, and he's so wise for his years, And He's travelled around Thailand and he lives in Australia now. But what he says about seeing the world at a young age is so important, because quite often we drink it away, don't we? The trouble is with me, I carried on till I was 54.
Yeah.
So I've got a lot of making up to do. But so through your uni days, did that affect all your studying, your exams?
I don't think it did until probably like third year. So especially with uni, your first year doesn't actually count. So your second year is worth 40%, your third year is worth 60%. So your first year is just like, right, settle in. So I did skip loads of lectures, loads of seminars, but in the first year it just didn't count. So everyone kind of had the same mentality. And I think at that point my drinking had just started, so I was just beginning really. So it didn't really affect anything. But then when it got to third year, like a lot of my friends really like buckled down with their studies, and I was like, no, I just want to go out all the time and get drunk. And if they didn't want to go out and get drunk with me, then I'd go to work, and everyone there would be working in a bar, so they'd want to get pissed afterwards. So by third year, it definitely started taking a toll. I just scraped a 2-1, but I think I could have done a lot better if I hadn't been drinking, if I'm honest.
Yeah, well, you did well, really. Because, I was studying for a course. I was learning to be a counsellor, and I used to take my homework to the pub, thinking it was, I'd set the table out and look all professional, and then go and get myself a pint of Peroni, sit down. 4 pints later, I'd be writing this 1,500-word piece. And then at the end of it, I was 7-8 pints in, and now I press send. And I was like, yeah, I've absolutely nailed that in my own way.
Yeah.
I've put a real spin on that. And I believed that I was this huge philosopher bloke. And I would go into college on the Thursday and they would look at me and say, what was that?
Yeah, just nonsense.
It was absolute nonsense.
Yeah.
But I believed I was a genius, and it just goes to show what the booze does. So,
yeah. See, interestingly, mine wasn't, I don't think it was as affected by the alcohol, my work, but definitely like the hangovers. I didn't used to like write or work drunk, but I was always hungover. So if I turned up to a lecture, I wasn't paying attention. If I wrote an essay, it was very half-assed attempt. Like it was a lot of the hangovers that did me in.
Yeah. So when you left uni, where did you go from there?
So I went to work in PR first of all, and then journalism, and they are both very boozy careers. So I worked for like a lot of, some of the PR companies had booze brands, so we would have like Free Bar Friday. And when I was interning, so when I first started, you didn't really, there's a lot of laws now about how you get paid as an intern, but back then it was like you just got your like travel expenses paid and everything was working for free. So they used to really ply you with alcohol as like a great incentive. And when you aren't earning any money, you're like, this is great, free booze. So I would do stupid things like stay out on a Tuesday night and then end up in Dover because I was trying to get my train home and I'd fall asleep on the train. And yeah, just created chaos really for like the next 5 or so years.
Yeah. But you say I was in that boozy career. Most people I talk to relate to their careers as boozy.
Yeah, it is true actually. I always say this, and then someone will say, oh, well, I work in finance and that's really boozy. And then people will be like, I'm a doctor and that's really boozy. And you're like, oh, wow. So every job is boozy.
I know. And something I heard the other day that was quite disturbing, really. It was about a situation where a guy wasn't drinking. And because he didn't go to the pub, the guy that did go to the pub was obviously favoured in a lot of the positions. So it's quite discriminative, really, as well, isn't it? That you get looked at as, not one of the boys or one of the lads, and you're boring, and that's shocking, really, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit like, do you watch Friends?
Well, I've seen it, yeah.
Yeah, so that episode where like Rachel isn't smoking and everyone else in the office smokes, and then like the other girl gets the promotion and the trip away because she doesn't smoke. It's very like that. I think it's a lot of the kind of missed opportunities that will go against you just because you don't drink, which is so wrong.
I know that's almost like what we talk about a lot now, is sober shaming, and I have to hold my hands up, and I think most people will, that they've done it. Have you?
Oh yeah, I think all sober people are ex-sober shamers, but I mean, I can look at it now in a really good way when people do it to me. And to be honest, it's quite rare now. But when it did used to happen at the start, I used to really think about how I was in that situation and think, okay, well, the reasons I did it is because I wanted to be everyone, like I wanted everyone else to be as drunk as me, so they didn't notice how drunk I was. I wanted to make sure that they were drunk so that they would stay out until, you know, the last minute with me. It's so many reasons why I sober shame, so I can kind of put myself in that boat now and understand why people do it, but it doesn't make it right.
No, it doesn't make it right, but I get you there, because I think a lot of it was my own shame. That I mean, I remember looking at this couple, and he had orange juice and she had a cup of tea. And I said something to myself like, why are they even in a pub? Just go to the, you know? But I think some part of that was my own guilt, that actually it was 3 o'clock in the afternoon. I told them that I was going shopping, and I sneaked into the pub knowing that I was going to meet her at 5 after her work and that. And I thought, well, I've completely lied about where I am now just so I can get 4 or 5 under my belt before she turns up.
Yeah.
And it was the shame and sort of bad feeling I felt about myself. So a bit like when you say when we're out and that, we're justifying our drinking. And it's so wrong, but it's a good way to be, actually, to look at the way you look at it, is that to try and understand it and remember where we were back then as well.
Yeah, I always try and put myself back in that headspace, because I think otherwise I would take it very personally.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So what point did you start to question your relationship with alcohol?
I think I'd always sort of questioned it when I used to have the most horrendous hangovers and used to do stupid stuff. I mean, we've all said I'm never drinking again, but there were a lot of points where I seriously considered it. And I mean, I remember even one point at uni, I did 40 days of no drinking for Lent because I just knew that it was getting a bit out of hand. But that didn't stop me carrying on for another 5 years. I think I always knew my relationship with alcohol didn't really look like my friends. They didn't used to suffer the way I did, or they didn't black out. Like they used to say, oh, do you not remember what you did last night? And I'd say no. And they couldn't understand it. They'd never blacked out in their lives. They'd be like, well, you really don't remember? And I'd be like, no, I genuinely have no recollection. So I kind of always knew that it didn't look like everyone else's. And then when I was about 24, 25, I went through a relationship breakup, which was a 6-year relationship. And I just went headfirst into like going out all the time and getting absolutely hammered because, you know, as like a young 20-something woman, that's how you're told that you get over heartbreak, is like go out, get really pissed, get your dancing shoes on. And I always say like Geordie Shore was massive when I was younger. And that was, you know, all about going out, getting mortal and being really raucous. So I just did that for like a period of a year, and I really just noticed the effect it was having on my mind. And the next day I would be so depressed, so upset, so anxious, and that would kind of stay with me for like 4 or 5 days. And then I'd just about feel better again, and I'd go, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to go out and get pissed again. And so I really started to notice that. And then it was a bit worrying. You know, like my family started to worry. My mum was forever worried that I was going to like fall on a train track and die, or there were loads of times I couldn't remember how I got home, and my mum used to be like, someone's just going to take you, kidnap you, and like that's going to be it. So that was kind of when I really started to actually question it. I think probably like 24, 25.
So how did you do it? Did you just stop, or did you try another 30 days?
So kind of all throughout that period, I like did, I mean, dry January used to be called dryathlon. I did a dryathlon once. But then I always think this was fate. So I was on the tube to work I think it was probably about Christmas time. And I read a copy, I was really hungover as well, I should add. I read a copy of Stylist magazine. And in it, there was an interview with Catherine Gray, and it was talking about her new book that was coming out in January, The Unexpected Joy of Being Sober. And I read the interview and I thought, God, I really resonate with that. Like maybe I should read that book. And I took a picture of the article and then didn't do anything about it. And it got to February 2018, and I went out on a big night out. I literally don't remember hardly any of it. My friends told me the next day all the embarrassing things I'd done, and I just woke up feeling like ashamed and like sick and tired. And then I was like, oh, maybe I should download that audiobook. So the worst anxiety, I downloaded it and just listened to Catherine for like 8 solid hours on a hangover. And it was like the first time in my life that anyone had ever positioned sobriety as a positive thing. And it sounds really silly now, but I only ever thought this will be the death of my social life. No one will want to hang out with me. I'll be miserable all the time. It never crossed my mind that it was something I could do fully. And she just made it like sound so appealing. So after that day, I was like, I'm never drinking again. And then, yeah, it will be 4 years in Feb. So, yeah.
Amazing. I mean, it goes to show what messages people put out there, how it can change your whole life. And I had Catherine on my podcast a couple of weeks ago, actually, and it was like talking to a friend that I've known for 20 years, you know, and she was so down to earth. And even though she's got a new puppy that was chewing a bone in the background, and it was just like such a lovely chat. And she's got her new book, Sunshine, Warm, Sober, out as well, isn't she?
Yeah.
Which is amazing, because we'll go on to that a bit later about the second phase of sobriety, because I find the first year is spent learning so much about yourself and who your friends are, and also learning about the false beliefs of alcohol. You know, what you just said about how am I meant to socialize without it? And some people like, oh, I won't be able to get to sleep if I don't have a drink. And how can I sort out my anxiety if I can't have that glass of wine after work? And quite often you find everything's the opposite of what you thought when you were drinking, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. I think that first year, like you're tackling so many firsts as well. So you do like your first sober Christmas, maybe you do like a first sober date, maybe like all of these different things that you have to tackle. So that year is just fully a learning experience, I think.
Yeah, it is. And I found my second year completely different. But when you reached a year, did you struggle a little bit after that? Because there's always landmark issues. And for me, I remember I went to the real kombucha factory in the Cotswolds in the morning. It was so lovely, but I'd ruptured my Achilles tendon and I didn't know.
Yeah.
I could hardly walk. And then I went to go to the Brewdog bar in London that just opened. And my day really started to decline because I was tired and I was getting lots of love on Instagram and that. And 2 or 3 days later, I kind of had a bit of a slump, and I felt, what's next then? Because I suppose it's a bit like when we have a baby and it's a big build up, and then you go home after and it's screaming and crying in the night, and you're left on your own. And I felt like that when just after my year. Did you struggle at all?
Yeah, I think I've had several dips, I would say. Like one was about 6, 7 months in. And that is when I'd been doing the whole thing like on my own. I hadn't spoken about sobriety on Instagram at all. It wasn't really a thing then. And I kind of realized that I needed support because I just didn't know anyone else not drinking. And although my friends were like really amazing, they just didn't get it because I was like, oh, do you want to talk about non-alcoholic wines? Or has anyone got a top tip for me to go on a sober date? And like no one could really help with that. So my first dip was kind of that 6, 7 month milestone when I was like, right, I need to actually meet other people and I need to have help. And then I think there was that like year and a half phase, because I think, like you say, that with that first year, it is all a learning curve. So I think you put so much energy into staying sober, learning about alcohol, like navigating all those things that you did before, that I think then you get to that point where actually you're like, okay, I've done all that now, what's next? And then I think that's when you really start putting your energy into things possibly like outside of sobriety, like new hobbies, new experiences, traveling, new passions, new career. I think the first year is just like, okay, how do I get through this year? Let me just get through this. And all your energy is concentrating on that. And then I think after that, you have to reposition it as more like, okay, now how do I make my world bigger and how do I fill it with things now that alcohol has been taken out of the equation?
Yeah, you have to find other things. Um, but also what you've got to remember is that in the first year, you're having to deal with emotions, aren't you?
Yeah.
Like, well, we've been blunting them for all those years, and I kind of struggled with that a little bit. So I learned to park them. So I concentrated on how to fill my time, how to get over my cravings. But it was a journey, and I mean, for me, having my social media was such a help for me. I tried AA and that just didn't work for me. It just didn't feel right. And
Yeah.
that's all I've got to say. So I started posting on social media, and really pretty quickly, actually, I was getting messages saying, I can really relate to what you're saying, Dave. And I think for me, because of my age, an older man, um, 6 foot lump covered in tattoos, it was quite rare, I suppose,
Yeah, you definitely filled a much needed niche on
Yeah,
Instagram.
yeah, yeah. And I think because I'm not afraid of talking about my feelings and the ups and downs, people like real, don't they? It's not all banging the drums and bells and whistles, and there are some down moments just like life, and I talked about that, and that's when I've had the most impact, I think. And so for you, like when you say you didn't say a lot for 6 months, is that when you decided to launch Sober Girl Society then?
Yeah, because I it was me trying to fill something that I felt like I needed, because I looked on Instagram and I followed lots of pages at the time for like girls my age that had kind of like a shared cause. So there was like anti-diet riot clubs that like focused on body positivity, and there was like the Insecure Girls Club that talked about women and insecurities. And I thought, wow, wouldn't it be great if there was something that I could find that was like women talking about alcohol? And I searched and I searched and I found some amazing places. It was like Club Soda and One Year No Beer, and they were all running, but they just didn't feel like the exact right fit for me. So I thought, okay, well, if it's not out there, then maybe I start it. So with very little knowledge of Instagram at that point, I just started a page and thought, maybe like 10, 15 of us will find each other and that will be that. And didn't realize what would happen.
It exploded, didn't it? It literally
Yeah.
exploded.
Yeah. And from the beginning as well, and with very little like pushing, like I
Yeah.
wasn't actively trying to like promote the page. People just ended up coming to it. And I was like, I don't know where you're all coming from.
I know, and you know what? It is sad for me, really, is that I see so many men trying to do the same, and they launch their pages. Let's talk about mental health, or along those lines, and they never quite go the same way. And I remember Scott, your wonderful friend Scott.
Yeah,
Um,
bestie.
he did the talk, didn't he? That I appeared on with Darren, the personal trainer, Timmy Essex, and
Yeah.
Craig. And it was such eye-opening experience to be able to talk about the struggles men have, talking about their feelings, the different problems they have when they decide to stop drinking. And I mean, Darren told us a story, didn't he, about his friend who died,
Yeah.
and it was a typical situation that I've been many a time, where you're coming trashed and you're all raiding the freezer for pizzas and that, and his friend was laying face down and said, leave me, I'm fine, I'm knackered and that. And when he got up in the morning, he had died, hadn't he? And it was
Mm.
things like this that had really affected Darren, and struggled to talk about it. And when I look at men in our sober community, it's so very few that open themselves up to have conversations. And like I've said before, they curtain twitch my account.
Yeah.
So, you know, I'm my followers are 87% women,
Yeah.
13% men. And I know that's quite normal, I think. But I never really have men interact a lot on my account. It's always a DM.
Yeah.
Really feel there's a niche there, and it's difficult to know how to do it, because you can't force men to come out and talk openly, and that I do support them, but I think there's a niche of younger men that are more open now.
Yeah. There's a lot of like men on their own, younger men talking on their accounts about not drinking. People like Spencer Matthews, Don McGregor, Chris Wills. They all talk about it, but there isn't like a central hub, which is quite a shame. And I think the way that often it is positioned is more of like, oh, it's a productivity tool or it will like enhance your life. I don't think many men are necessarily talking about it from like a mental health perspective or like an alcohol dependency perspective, which I think is quite interesting in itself.
Yeah, it is. But I'm someone that I'm hoping that I can talk for all ages because, you know, I did that talk with Sarah Drake in the college the other day, and I kind of had to hit it from an angle that they would relate from an older man, like someone
Yeah.
who's old enough to be their dad. I didn't want to be preachy on the stage and you don't do this, but so, and the two groups were completely different. One was like a sports group in the afternoon. And I hit them with the fact that I was a semi-pro footballer when I was their age. So fitness was really key for me. But we also didn't have the knowledge that we know now about alcohol. And the teachers at the end came over and they said, do you know what? You could hear a pin drop. So
Yeah.
that was either petrified of me,
Yeah, you terrified them.
yeah, or they were actually listening. And to be honest, Sarah smashed it as well because her story about her dad Steve as well was so. It's like she had been public speaking forever. She was so good. But I came away from there and I thought, do you know what? Education is so key these days, and by us speaking out, just having conversations about alcohol and the stigma, the shame, the false beliefs, you know, the physical, mental health things to do with alcohol is so important. And I think that's where social media is a real positive.
Oh, 100%. I think social media has its downsides, but I can name 1,000 positive things that have happened to me because of social media and connecting with people. And like some of my best friends I have made through social media and through not drinking. So like there's so many positives that I could name for it.
Yeah, and I know some of them as well. I
Yeah.
mean, little Emily, Jesus. I mean, I said to her and Rachel, I cannot imagine what you were like when you were drinking because
Oh, yeah.
you're crazy now.
When we get together, we're like, it's lucky we did not know each other because one of us would die on a night out because we would all encourage each other. Like, I think it's the best thing that we didn't meet as
I
drinkers.
know, I know, but I agree with you. You know, I've got more friends now than I've never had in my whole life, but they're all lovely.
Yeah.
They're all genuine, always checking on me, but genuinely checking on me. Like, see, I thought about you today, Dave, just wondering how you are. Not, Dave, fancy going on a piss Saturday.
Yeah.
Um, and it makes you feel so special because even like us, you know, we meet at events and whatever, and it's like we've known each other forever, you know, and it's,
Yeah.
we met at the Redemption Bar. I don't know if you remember that.
Yes. Yeah.
I was late because I thought it was 6:30 and it was 6, and I was a bit flustered. And I had a non-alcoholic beer that I put behind you, and then you flung round and you went, Dave. Bottle had tipped over and was tipping down the back of your trousers. I felt like a
I'm
fool.
not sure I like how my accent is coming across here.
Yeah, I'll reframe that. Dear. Yeah. But it's things like that. Is, you know, we were making some mocktails, weren't we?
Yeah.
And it was such a fun experience. And I've met so many amazing people. But I've just thought of something actually. This Christmas is my fourth sober event, and I think you've come to one, have you, or none?
Might be none.
None, right? Okay. Well, there's still some.
Mark me down for this year.
So, after Sober Girl Society, you went solo and you launched your camp, Millie Gooch.
Yes.
Now, I remember you saying something about being slightly fed up, talking about sobriety, and someone said that to me 2 days ago or something. They said, "Do you ever get fed up talking about it?" And it took me half an hour, I suppose, to really let that question sink in. And the answer was no, right? But no, that surprised you, didn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah.
But it's my life now. So at my stage of life, I've completely changed career. And I must admit, I've kind of swapped one addiction for the other because I just literally work hours and hours and hours in this newfound career of mine. But I think my wife gets fed up with it. She says to me, I just want Dave back. All I see is sober Dave. Do you know?
Yeah.
So for you as a younger person, did you get to a stage that you just thought, you know what, where's the real Millie Gooch here, or where were you with that?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I'm like fed up, because when I speak, like we could do this podcast for like 5 hours, and I'm sure I'd be more than happy to talk about it. It was more the issue that it became like my fully defining thing. Like I felt like I totally lost my identity in just being like Millie, the sober person, and people even started referring to me as Sober Girl Society, and I was like, that's not my name. That's like the thing I run. And I just, I've got so many other passions in life, and I come from like a journalism background, and like writing for me is like my thing. And I mean, really, when I started Sober Girl Society, I was like writing about sobriety. It was like the next thing that I wanted to write about, but I didn't want it to become my entire identity. And something really stuck with me. I went on a hen do a few months ago, and the bride, oh no, it wasn't a few, it was about a year ago now. The bride's sister said to the bride, and the bride passed this feedback on to me and said, oh, she said that you were a lot more fun than she thought you were going to be. And I said, well, what did she think I was going to be? And she was like, oh, I think she just thought, because you're sober and you talk about it all the time, that maybe you'd be like preachy or telling other people not to drink. And I was like, no, like that isn't what it's like at all. And I was like, oh God, like people are getting this perception of me that I am this like awful preachy person about sobriety, and I was like, and that's not what I want to be. And I still absolutely love talking about it. I'll still help anyone, and I still love running Sober Girl Society and doing the events, but I think the focus is now kind of off me, as in like I don't really talk about my story. I do when I talk on podcasts and things like that, but I find it really hard to just keep going over the same ground all the time about my story, why I started drinking. And like my drinking career was very like fast and short. It was like 8 years. So when I was at 18 to 26, now I've been out of it for 4 years. So I've nearly been like, I've been sober more like longer than I have been a drinker. So I just didn't want it to define me anymore. Like it's not that I'm fed up of talking about it, because I could go on a talking spree about it for hours and hours, and I'm very happy to talk to anyone about it. I just didn't really want it to become my defining thing anymore.
Well, I'm glad you said you're happy talking about it. Otherwise, I'd have to edit the first half an hour.
Yeah.
Jesus.
But I hope in a way that is, I would rather that comes across as inspirational, that like people now, because I was so into drinking, it was my entire personality. I was Millie, the pisshead party girl. I was the friend that you drink if you wanted a good time. And now it's so little part of my life. Like I hope that people can see that at one point, like it might feel like the scariest, most awful decision now, but at one point it will become so normal that you'll actually be kind of over it. So like I hope that comes across in a good way.
It does, and I'm over it. I mean, I had a tricky couple of months ago with a lot of things, and out of anything, that would have been the time that I would have probably thought, you know what, I'm going to drink. And I didn't even think of it.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's so ingrained in my life now. And I think that's where I throw myself so much into everything, that I've formed this whole new lifestyle, life change. And that's really helped me, because I think if I did it on my own, I think I would struggle a lot more with that.
Yeah.
So I hear you, and you're a lot younger as well. And I think there's so many people in their 20s now and 30s that are choosing that lifestyle choice. My son's 27, and we went to see Ricky Gervais at the Palladium the other night, and everyone was drinking. And I was thinking, God, if that was me, I'd really struggle after going in there to keep getting up, going back to the bar if that was open.
Yeah.
But me and George, we had like a Coke each, and that was it. So he didn't think, oh, I'll have a couple of beers before we go in there. He's not bothered.
Yeah.
He's really not bothered. And a lot of his friends aren't as well. And there's a lot of people like Katie McNichol that's been on the podcast. She's 25, 26. She's not drinking. Ben Robinson, he's not drinking. He's 28, I think. So I think there's a whole new flow of people coming through that are choosing it as a lifestyle choice rather than people my age where they've been drinking. I was trying to work out, actually, when you said I've been sober more than I was drinking, I'd be long time dead if that was me.
But this is why you're not bored of talking about it, because you've got such a big breadth of your life drinking, and you've probably got a million more stories than I do. So it's not like you're talking about the same thing, because you've got like 40 years to cover. I've
got 40 years, but also kind of cover a different age group, don't I? So I've always said, and I think it's important that you're never, ever too old to change your life, because it would be easy for me at 50. I was 54 when I stopped. It would have been easy for me to think, do you know what? I've been drinking 40 years. What's the point?
Yeah.
And then start saying, I only have a few beers with the lads and, you know, it's not a real problem. But I knew it was a real problem. Everything was being compromised. You know, my marriage, my health was just disgraceful. And I came to a crossroads where I thought, where am I going to be in 5 years? I could be dead easily, you know. So it's the best thing I've ever done. It really is. And there are ups and downs, but I could talk forever about all the benefits of it. And it would take me 5 minutes to talk about the bits, the FOMO.
Yeah.
And what we like talking about is the JOMO.
JOMO. Yeah. I'm a big fan of JOMO.
Is that actually a song that you've written?
No, that was just a catchy jingle I came up with.
So then you've written a book, a handbook.
Yes.
Talk to me.
Oh, do you know what? So there was so much amazing crit lit out there. There is so much amazing crit lit out there. But I read it all at the start. I read everything. And there was just a couple of things that I thought were missing in the kind of sphere. One, or that I wanted to kind of read about. One was that I didn't think there was anything aimed at anyone under 30. That was like my first thing. Everything I read was by someone 30 or over. And there were just bits that I didn't relate to. I couldn't like relate to parenting and things like that. The second was, I didn't think many of them really covered mental health in the way that I kind of experienced it. So like that real beer fear, anxiety, blackouts, how, you know, alcohol affects your mental health on a longer scale and not just the night after. And then the third one was I couldn't really find a lot of, like, there was so much that was talking about the process of giving up alcohol and that kind of thing. But there wasn't a lot that talked about how you could do all the things when you're sober. So, you know, I wanted tips for how do I go on a sober date? How do I go to a sober wedding? What do I do if I go to a festival? And I couldn't find that really practical, like, okay, here's some really good tips that have really helped me. So those are like the three things that I really wanted to incorporate into the book. And that is kind of like the whole premise really, is that it's just a really practical handbook. And it is, to be honest, less about the process of quitting drinking and more how to live like an amazing sober life. That was the focus that I wanted. So yeah, I wrote that, came out in January. An updated edition is coming out in December with a new chapter on harm reduction, moderation and mindful drinking.
Well, there's a plug for you, darling. Is it? We'll put that in the show notes. No, it's great. And I have got it actually in my collection. It's such a great book, honestly. And it's so important to have a variety, isn't it? Because we got like William Porter, our friend, good old William, who's actually called Sam.
Yeah, I remember when I found that out. It blew my mind.
I know, but it was funny. I love him so much because he's so intelligent and that, but he can be so silly at times. He said, I thought everyone had a different name when they wrote a book. It's like, no. He just plucked it out of nowhere. Do you know what I mean? But and one of my favourite books as well is Professor David Nutt's book Drink.
Yeah.
Because I get fascinated about the science of it and the neurotransmitters. And I've just recently had a DNA test, and not the ones where it's finding out who my lost uncle from Gambia is. It's to do with my biological makeup. And they found out actually that one of my dopamine receptors doesn't work.
Oh.
It's actually faulty. And there's a high chance that is why I drank like I did, because I was a really, really fast drinker. And I wasn't getting that long-term dopamine hit from drinking. It was very short-lived. And that's why my nickname was Glugs, because I could down 7, 8, 9 pints in an hour and a half easily.
Yeah.
You know,
I want to get this test. Where'd you get it?
I will send you details, but it's it's a full test. And they also said, which my wife was nodding her head going, yeah, it's that actually naturally I'm half empty. My glass is half empty.
That's
And
interesting.
that's not all that, because my serotonin levels are naturally really low.
Yeah.
So I have to work hard to boost my serotonin levels to feel like maybe you might feel when you get up in the morning and
Yeah.
you're full of beans. I'm getting up and I'm putting my hands through my hair, wondering how I'm going to get through the day, you know. And I know that I come across on Instagram as super positive in that, but I'm real as well. You
But
know,
see, I think I'm more like you. I have to really work to be positive. Like, and I never, if I wake up in the morning, I could sleep forever. I never wake up like, let's take on the day. I have to get out and have to be like, right, what am I going to do to
yeah.
get myself to where I need to be?
It's really interesting actually, and I was really deficient on vitamin D.
We should all take vitamin D. That's a one
Yeah.
that they say we should take.
Yeah, and I bought this spray. It was 2,000 milligrams, I think, and you just spray it under your tongue.
Yeah.
It just boosts your vitamin D, um, and it's literally a full breakdown of what I was like, and it helps me understand myself, but it also helps me to be able to boost things like we all need magnesium when we stop drinking because we're depleted in that, and magnesium cream's a lot better than the supplements, and you find these things out you would never think of before. And
Yeah.
for me, it was mainly because I was trashing myself that much. I thought I was clapped out anyway. I thought
Yeah.
there's no point. But when I stopped, I realized the importance of nutrition, how that helped me to repair myself and to sleep properly, how important a good night's sleep is. And you know, in the beginning, you really struggle and you're like laying there thinking, well, normally I go to sleep straight away after a few drinks, but that's not normal sleep, is it?
No. You don't get the REM sleep if you,
No,
yeah.
that's it. But once that starts kicking in and you wake up in the morning, say after a couple of 3 weeks and that, and you wake, it's like, oh my God. And even this cold that I've had has made me realize actually how healthy I feel most days. Yeah, I
Yeah.
felt like that cold times 10 every single day when I was drinking because of the amount I was drinking, but I was just topping up. I was never allowing myself repair. Um,
Yeah.
I could never go back to that.
I think about that with hangovers. Like when I wake up on a Sunday and I feel so fresh, I'm like, the last thing I would want to be
Yeah.
today is hangover.
And I've often talked about some of the times you drink more when you shouldn't have done. And it's not like when you've got a hard day's work the next day, it's when you've got a day off and you think, I've got tomorrow off so I can get pissed tonight. Yay.
Yeah.
But
I
then
used to
wake up.
deliberately not put stuff in my on like a Sunday so that I could get as trashed as possible.
I mean, it's crazy. It's so crazy. And now I get up and I've planned something for the day and I'm fresh-ish, not compared to you at 30 years old, but I do my best. But you know, my mind's clear. I'm not worrying about the night before, what I've said. Me and Em are normally in a good place, normally. Sorry, Em. Um, you know, and I just when people ask me the question, do you think you will ever drink again? The answer is no, and I honestly don't think I will. I don't.
Yeah, I say that. And then people say never. And I'm like, but genuinely, like my life has only changed in positive ways. I cannot think of a single thing that would draw me enough back to drinking. Like I just don't. And I've been through some really like crappy times over like the 4 years that I've not been drinking. And I'm so grateful to have got through all of them sober that I just don't think there's anything now that could push me back. I think I've been through it all.
Yeah, I know. And when you write it down, what the benefits are, it's normally an hour's worth, isn't it? It's
Yeah.
like short period before when you think, oh, I can have a drink at 6. There's a little dopamine spike. And then you have the drink. Then there's the next dopamine spike. And then half an hour later, when you're half bottle down, and then you're just thinking, oh God, I'll probably drink the rest of that now. Me, it would have been 3. Um, but it's the hamster wheel of going round and round and round. And this is why I say it's so important to wind the clock forward and think, actually, for that hour, is it worth it? You know, it's not. And what are the benefits that I've got in my life now? And you know, when you talk about mental health, the anxiety that dropped in my life was almost immediate.
Yeah. I think you have like, there's two, for me, there was like the first immediate drop of anxiety, which was the like not blacking out. So I could remember all my night, because like that used to give me like the fear of what did I do? What did I say? You get that initial kind of drop. Then there was that like 6 months of learning kind of who you are again and navigating emotions. And during that period as well, then it kind of really helped me work on that stuff as well. So if I used to wake up and I was anxious, because I was still like recovering from the week before, I, you know, wouldn't get outside, I wouldn't see friends, I'd not want to look at my phone. Whereas now I'm really equipped when I do feel anxious, and I do still struggle with anxiety, is that I feel like I've got the tools in place and know what I need to do and have the clarity and the energy to be able to do that, to be like, right, you need to get outside for an hour, just go for a walk, or you need to call a friend. Whereas when I was drinking, even if it wasn't the immediate aftermath, I feel like, because I was always like recovering or tired or looking forward to the next drink, I never actually went out and did all those things that I do now to kind of quell that anxiety.
Yeah. Is there anything you found out about yourself that surprised you?
Do you know what? Not necessarily like found out about myself, but found out about all of us in general, is that like we give so much credit to alcohol for things that it really doesn't deserve. And like I always used to think that that first drink would help me settle into a social occasion. You know, when you get there and you go, oh, I've just got to get a drink, and then I calm down. And now, because I've been to so many events that don't involve alcohol, I think you get like an hour in and you're like, wow, everyone is so chatty and having a really good time and it's really buzzy. I always used to think, oh, it's the alcohol, but it's actually just getting comfortable in situations. And the alcohol has nothing to do with that. You just naturally, as a human, settle in. So I think, you know, what I've learned about myself is that actually I will probably struggle for the first like 10, 15 minutes of any social situation because it's abnormal. And then I will settle into it. And there doesn't need to be drink involved in that. It's just human nature that you take a while to get comfortable in uncomfortable situations. So I think that was one big thing. I think another thing I learned is that I'm not actually as much of a party person as I thought. I used to think, you know, I'm like ultimate raver. And now it just doesn't make me happy. And don't get me wrong, I still love a night out. But it gets like 1 o'clock and I'm like, I'm done. Let's go home now. Like I used to think I was like 6 a.m., stay till the very end. So I figured that out about myself.
Well, that could be an age thing, Millie.
It could also be an age thing. I do think that.
I doubt it, personally, but I think what I found out about myself was that I'm a lot quieter than what I thought I was.
No, not you.
Yes, yes. I would be that lad that would go into a pub and put his arms up in the air and say, Dave is here, let's get drunk in that. But I value my time alone a lot more now. You
Yeah.
know, I really do. And in fact, I'm going to a retreat soon, 3 days, where there's no Wi-Fi or anything. And
Oh, I'm doing that. Is it unplugged?
yeah.
Yes, I'm doing that next week. When are you going?
Oh, I'm going the end of the month, so you'll have to tell me. But yeah, it's what I want to do. I really want to get in touch with myself and think, right, you know, it's important for me because there's so much stuff going on around me. It's literally manic, you know. And I thought that it just really made me light up when I heard about it. And 3 nights away.
Are you going on your own?
Yeah.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to stay in touch and you can tell me or not about
Yeah, as if I come back. It's a cabin in the woods.
And you get a map and a compass. And I think there's a pub half an hour away. So I thought I'm going to go there lunchtime rather than in the evening so I can hunker down in the afternoon. And I've got a few things that I'm working on myself. And I thought, do you know what? It gave me the real ideal opportunity to block everything out, sit with nature and just really, really unwind and get in touch with myself, you know, like just to look deep about my past and what I've been through. And that will help me probably with my upcoming project.
Oh, exciting.
Yeah. It's, you know, like this podcast, it was just random out the blue. Em said to me, she came out of the bathroom once, right, and said, I think I might do a podcast. And I said, yeah, that's a good idea. I might do one too, actually. And about 5 weeks later, episode 1, season 1 came out. And I
I
haven't looked
love
back
that.
since. It's just come out of nowhere. And I love doing it so much. And, you know, like just chatting to you on here, I could, as you said earlier, I could talk to you for 5 hours and
Yeah.
just, but I think people would probably get bored by then, but we wouldn't.
We could do a sponsored one for Alcohol
Yeah.
Change. We could do a
Oh, God.
24-hour
Yeah,
podcast marathon.
absolutely. You know, that's a good idea, actually. That's a brilliant idea because you're an ambassador as well, aren't you?
I am, yeah. We could do that. And then people can come in and out and we can just have a 24-hour chat.
24-hour live or yeah, that's a
I don't
fantastic.
know why I've agreed to this. I can't stay up longer than like 12 hours, but I'll give it a
I
good
can't
go.
go to bed late when I past 8 at the moment. It's crazy, but you know, there's something in that. So maybe people listening to this can agree to sponsor us and
Yeah.
they will get lots of information.
Yeah, well, they're doing their challenge for Alcohol Awareness Week. So maybe after this, we'll have a conversation.
I'm gonna try and do some. Me and Em have made a film for that as well to
Oh,
help.
have you?
Yeah, to help couples dealing with alcohol problems and that. So we
Amazing.
made that a couple of weeks ago, and we're panicking a bit because we were both awake from about 4 a.m, and the guy turned up with a camera equipment, no makeup. Where's the makeup, darling? Where's the makeup? Well, isn't it? It's just it's like Jesus. But anyway. So what's in the future for you then?
Oh, so I'm currently looking into book 2.
Oh,
So that's actually what I'm going to work on while I'm at Unplugged. So I'm going to
ah,
have 3 days of like
now
really
that's a good
hammering
idea,
down.
Millie.
Yeah, so that's going to be the concept. So that's like the big thing. But then in the background, also like loads of good stuff with Sober Girl Society. So we're going to carry on the events. I want to get across the UK because COVID had like really put a stop to a lot of our plans. So next year we're going to do Manchester and Liverpool. We've already got plans for, and then hopefully across the UK for the rest of the year. That's like the events are just my favorite thing in the world. Like social media is great and everything like that, but just seeing people in real life and watching other people meet people who are in the same boat as them, I cry after every event because I'm like, I can't believe I organised this and people have made friends. Like, it's just too much for my brain to cope with. So that's like, yeah, the big thing for next year is just carry on with the events and then do some more writing, hopefully book 2.
Oh, well, that's amazing. And that's a great place to go to think about your second book because you can have all that peace and quiet, get lost in a field with your map and compass.
Oh, I'm so bad at directions, so if I come back, it'll be a miracle.
Yeah, yeah, there'll be a search party out. But look,
Yeah.
it's been honestly a real joy talking to you. Thank you so much. And my Christmas parties at the where you had yours, you know where it is, the
Oh yeah.
hotel. Come along, it's December the 11th. I'd love to see you there.
I'll be there with a Christmas hat on.
Yay! I'll give you a
I'm actually free that day, I think, so I will actually be there.
Yeah, well, we'll talk. All right. Thank you so much, Millie. Lovely to see you, and I'll see you
Thank
soon.
you. See you later.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.